Welcome back to the Commanders Declassified podcast. We are heavy into the offseason because the rest of the teams in the NFL playoffs are playing each other, getting kicked out, and we're at home watching and enjoying, but our team never sleeps, guys, right? So, team building is the thing that we excel in, at least in news. So, we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk all about the quarterbacks currently on the roster, what happened last year with our quarterbacks, and where we think we're going to go from there. So you want to stay locked in and don't miss this episode. Make sure you're subscribed. Go out to your subscription area, click that button, click the link, do what you got to do, send it off. We would greatly appreciate that. Eric, how are you, sir?
Doing all right, man. We're transitioning into the offseason. It's the best time to be a Commanders fan. Has been for 25 years. And this offseason will be no different.
Yeah, the excitement starts now for us. And Brian, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. I am in full mock draft season mode. I'm ready to talk about the offseason because there is so much going on, a whole lot better than what happened this past season.
Should we post Ellie's mock draft 1.0 that I sent out the other day?
Yes. People would love that one.
We should. We should tweet that.
7 rounds of quarterbacks. Let me ask you guys this real quick. Eric, this offseason, we know there's going to be some transition potentially after this year. General offseason approach with Rivera, and we'll do an episode on this in particular, but do you think there's going to be an aggressive approach in general or more of a conservative approach?
I think that they're going to take an aggressive approach and fall on their face. Like, I just don't think, I think they're going to try really hard to bring in as much help as they can. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think I do see them making a really big push for Derek Carr. And he will rebuff the team because the stability here just isn't going to be what he needs it to be. And he will have many, many other options. So I think you will see a lot of big swings and a lot of big misses coming up this offseason. That's my projection.
Yeah, certainly plausible. Brian, do you agree?
No, I think I think Ron wants to do those things, right? Like, I think if everything was equal and he had everything available to him, yeah, he'll trade whatever first round picks he can for a Derek Carr, or if by some magic potion Aaron Rodgers becomes available, he would trade the whole farm for him. But I think with some of those things that you mentioned, this offseason of change, and at the end of season press conference Ron had, he said he had to consult with the Snyders for the budget. That's not something we hear. I think his hands will be tied in terms of what he can actually offer and spend this offseason. So I think it's unfortunately going to be a little quiet, but that's kind of how Ron operates. His free agency isn't very impactful, so I think it's going to be more of the same. I don't think he's going to be able to offer big contracts to anybody. I think he'll be a little bit more aggressive. He'll spend a little bit more money when it comes to maybe offensive line, but those big contracts, I don't think he's going to be offering up any first round picks or $200 million guaranteed for a quarterback.
Yeah, the issue is, you got to sign Payne, or if they want to sign Payne, they're going to have to give out big contracts, right? Yeah. So they're going to have to spend some money somewhere, right? So we'll get to that Payne conversation later. I tend to agree with what Eric said in terms of, I think there's going to be a few big swings, and then we'll see what hits and what doesn't, right? And then, because that's sort of what it's been every year he's been here, is like, swing at the moon, and then we're going to bring back all the guys we had last year, right? And then throw like a below average quarterback on the pile. And then, hey, we're going to see what we can win this year. But speaking of quarterbacks, last year's big offseason prize was Carson Wentz. And as you may know, if you're not familiar, it didn't exactly work out. So, Eric, give me a sense for your feel on Carson Wentz's performance, what went wrong, and we'll get into some other topics there as well.
Yeah, I don't know about prize, but I guess that's a term you could use. So congratulations, you won an eggplant or something. I don't know. Look, Carson Wentz could have. I don't know what they were thinking with Carson Wentz. Like, he did have a solid statistical year in Indy in 2021, and coming off of that performance. You could look at, in my opinion, it was kind of Kirk Cousins numbers where, they don't really mean anything because the record was there and the numbers were a lot of garbage stats. But they took the formula, or he achieved those numbers using a formula in Indianapolis. It was a run-heavy offense, a lot of play action. And he got here, and we didn't do any of that. We just dropped him back 7-step drops, didn't do play action, had him chucking downfield. He's notorious for his slower release, his slow processing time, and we just made it all. We, exacerbated every weakness that he had by just not tailoring the offense to what he did. So I don't know what, if there was some sort of resentment on the, between coaches, between who brought him in and who was calling plays, but it clearly didn't work because he was just a sitting duck back there. And our offensive play calling really did nothing to help him. And you saw once he got injured and we moved to Taylor Heinicke, we did start running the ball more. We started having more success. When Wentz came back, we went back to throwing it all over the place. So it's just, I don't know what happened there, but I do know that the offensive coordinator got fired. So I think there may have been a little something there, maybe not tangible or spoken, but I think there was a little bit of it seems like there was some spiteful play calling, I guess is the best way to put it. Because clearly the Carson Wentz experiment in DC did not work at all.
Yeah, when you go back and look at it, the peak moment for Carson Wentz, I think, was that Jacksonville game, right? And that was week 1.
Yeah.
And when you left out of that week 1 game, you sort of felt like, oh my gosh, we're going to break all kinds of passing records this year. We got a guy who can sling the football, and it gave you a glimpse of what I think you want in this league in a quarterback, right? A guy who can push the ball down the field with success. And that's what he did. But ultimately, if he wasn't going down the field, there was very little other success, aside from that. And that was the big issue. And now granted, that's always been an issue in Scott Turner's offense, predominantly is, try to push the ball down the field. You're going to throw it at the line of scrimmage, but everything else is really hit or miss. In terms of like Carson Wentz and sort of this like evolution that didn't happen, because I think from that Jacksonville game into the Lions game and then beyond that, we were waiting for it to click for him. And, Brian, do you subscribe to that notion that maybe the playbook was a little too hard? Scott Turner's offense had just a reputation for being hard to pick up for quarterbacks.
Yes and no, right? Yes, learning a brand new playbook again, right? This was the first time Carson Wentz had to learn a new playbook. In Philly, he had the same offense, and then he goes to Indianapolis where Frank Reich, he was his quarterback coach, right? He was a part of that same offense, so he didn't really have to learn anything different. This is the first time he had to learn a new offense in, how many ever years it was. So that's one kind of stumbling block he had to overcome. And with the transition here, yeah, Scott Turner's offense is difficult, but what makes it more difficult is the offense doesn't change based on whoever's at quarterback. It's Scott Turner's offense. He doesn't adjust it for Taylor Heinicke. He doesn't adjust it for Carson Wentz, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Sam Howell. It's the same offense. He wants you to run it regardless, is what we've heard. We heard Ryan Fitzpatrick commented on the Thursday night game against the Bears that it's this offense, you got to run it regardless. They don't tailor anything to your strengths. That certainly didn't help Carson there and trying to learn everything. But really the biggest thing is that Carson's a veteran, right? He's 30 years old. We knew what he was, right? There was no other ceiling that we were going to see, right? There was no other progression that was going to come. That upside is really reserved for younger quarterbacks, and he was essentially a known quantity. So I don't think there was ever going to be a next layer to his progression or his understanding of the offense. What we see is, what it was going to be. Unfortunately, maybe a little bit, maybe a few less sacks if he, knew what to do on certain plays. But there was no Pro Bowl season, not based on what we saw.
Yeah, and early on, he didn't really have the run game or the defense to support what he was trying to do or what they were trying to do with him. By the time that the running game came around, he had gotten hurt. And that was pretty much the end of it. Eric, the contract situation, I think, is why most fans had so much angst against Carson Wentz because it really prevented other upgrades that looked like a necessity last offseason. Um, do you agree with that notion?
Um, yes and no. I obviously his 28 million dollar cap hit was a little prohibitive when you're trying to upgrade your offensive line after losing an all pro, and you end up bringing in, a dude who has not sniffed all pro status in a couple of years, to replace him in Trey Turner. And on the other side, you had to bring in an aging guard in Norwell who, in the interior of the line struggled all year. And that could have been, but the salary cap can be manipulated. And it's one of the things I think the front office did right, was not restructuring Carson Wentz's contract, giving us an out this year. I applaud them for that, because this was clearly not a sure thing for it to bring him in, and to commit money to him past this year would have been a huge mistake, in my opinion. So it was short-term pain, but I think the long-term benefit clearly paid off, because he's not going to be around and we're not on the hook for his money. So if, upgrades may come this year in some other positions, possibly quarterback as well. But so yes, the 27 million against the cap obviously, kept us from signing some guys maybe we would have signed otherwise. But I'm fine with it, because we're done with Carson this year, and we have money to spend elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that move to not restructure his deal was huge. I know Ron was very vocal about, hey, we want Wentz. You're wanted here. We traded for you. You're our guy moving forward next year, the year after. But, I'm a big fan or a believer of, watch what people do, not what they say. And what they did was not restructure that contract, because, being able to get out after that first year with no additional cap hit is huge. And to me, that told me that Ron, while he may have wanted it to succeed and to work out long term, he knew it could blow up in his face, and he kept it as is. And unfortunately, it did blow up in his face. But we were able to get out of it after a year without any real big, additional lingering penalties.
Yeah,
it was a good hedge.
Yeah,
it was a very good hedge.
Exactly.
Until they pick up his option this year.
Yeah. If it worked, you had him under contract. Things were working well. You still have him, but if it didn't, you're out of it. So I'm completely cool with the way they handled his contract.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that I wouldn't have picked it up in the first place, but
28 million for a really good quarterback is not a lot of money. 28 million for a replacement level quarterback is way too much. This came out recently. I think John Keim was one that put it out about how they sort of landed on the Carson Wentz decision. They started out trying to acquire a bunch of other quarterbacks. He said that they made an attempt to trade for Kirk Cousins last offseason. They made some calls about Derek Carr. They were essentially calling around about a multitude of quarterbacks. None of them worked out. And they said, okay, well, here's Carson Wentz, right? So remember when the GM was like, we did our due diligence and we thought that Carson Wentz would be a good fit. What it really sounds like is they called a bunch of teams. Nobody was biting. And then finally somebody said, okay, hey, we got this guy named Carson. Kick the tires on.
Well, you saw it, though, last year. I mean, there was a big stink because there was an article that was out or a report or whatever that, they called every team in the NFL, and they even called the Chiefs about Patrick Mahomes. Like, that was common knowledge last year. So I don't think that's new news. It's just kind of it's almost like just rehashing a story that they've already told. We already knew that they called everybody, and they called around about quarterbacks, just trying to see what was there. So, I think that's much ado about nothing, in my opinion, because we already knew that they called around.
Yeah, and I think there was a story too. They had called either Phillip Rivers or Andrew Luck, guys who are retired, just to kind of see if they would come back.
Randall Cunningham.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So it just kind of shows you the desperation at which they were operating with.
If you're going X equals quarterback, I'd take Randall over Carson. Even today, I would. I like me some Randall.
I think the way that John Keim phrased it about actually attempting to trade for Kirk Cousins is news for me recently. But the overall strategy of quarterback acquisition, I think, has to be called into question. If your strategy is just calling every team about their veteran quarterback and saying, can we work something out? Not a plan. All right. So we lost Wentz got hurt, and then Heinecke came in, and I think Heinecke has a lot of favor with fans. And his performance is, well, Brian, I'll let you tell me, what do you think about his performance this year?
It was a standard Heineke performance, which is he is a high level backup. He's going to come in. He's going to give you a spark. He's going to give his 110% effort, right? You're not going to get any kind of less effort from Heineke. But he's a limited player. I mean, this is what we saw last year, right? In the 2021 season, where he played essentially the entire year. He came in, he provided a spark, and then over time it started to fade. The ability, the performances all started to fade, and you started to see what he is. He's a backup. He can give you some quality play for 4 or 5, maybe 6 games. But when you start to get to 8, 10 plus games and more, the flaws in his game start to come to light. And that's not any fault of his own. That's just who he is as a player, right? Like he's got a limited, kind of skill set and ability. And, to be honest, he maximized those. I don't think the play calling in particular down the stretch helped him because you saw the offense shift from the run heavy back to the pass heavy. And when you put the game on Heineke's arm as a backup quarterback, bad things are going to happen, right? We don't want Heineke throwing it 30, 35, 40 times a game. And when you put the game on his arm, you're going to have issues, right? You're going to have missed throws, interceptions, those types of things. And we started to see that, which kind of led to that the change to go back to Wentz. But if you can keep his a number of attempts down, run the football, move him in the pocket, you're able to get some production out of him, and you're able to win games, control that time of possession. It worked for a short period of time, but again, we got away from that. We put more on, Scott Turner put more on Heineke's arm, and you started to see some of those flaws come to the surface. So again, I think he's a quality backup. I think he's going to have a future as a backup. It doesn't look like it's going to be here, based on he's on an expiring contract. And, to start this past season, what did Ron do? He said, hey, the quarterback play in 2021 wasn't good enough. We need to go find a quarterback. And that's why they brought in Wentz. So I think that told you from the beginning what they thought of Taylor Heinicke. And then also with the addition of drafting Sam Howell, right? They may have thought that Sam Howell could fill the Heineke role moving forward, so we don't need to necessarily extend Heineke. And I think now with Scott Turner being out, he may follow Scott Turner, but I think he's proved that he can be a legitimate backup, and I'm sure there'll be other NFL teams who'll give him a contract.
Yeah, I think it's so hard to assess Heineke because you have to assess him as a starter because that's the role that he continually finds himself in. But I think, if he was purely just a backup, he's A+, right? Like if you're only counting on him to be your backup, and let's say he goes to, just a wild example, like he's in Denver Baltimore, right? Let's say he goes to Baltimore, and Lamar's missed 5 games each of last season. You have Heineke behind him. You have an A+ backup. But here he's been pressed into starter duty for 8 games, 7, things like that. And it's like, this is not, where you would want to see him. Now, I have an exercise for you. And Eric, I'll start with you. Let's assume that you have a good defense. Put Heineke on the 49ers. Okay. How many games in a 17-game season does Heineke win on the 49ers as the starter?
I mean, I think he wins 8, maybe 9.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that he's got his limitations, right? He's just because he's going to keep both teams in a game at all times. He's going to make a lot of bad decisions. And he's going to lose you a couple of games. We saw it this year. We saw the Giants game. I mean, his poor play was their loss directly resulted from his poor play and horrible officiating, but mostly his poor play. So, and you saw that multiple times in 2021 as well, where he just wasn't good enough, and he is what he is. And I think he's a high level backup, but he's going to get, defenses will figure him out if he's a long-term starter. And I don't think that's going to change because look at the skill players on the 49ers and the Commanders. I think they're comparable. I mean, I know that McCaffrey is better than anything we have, but at the wide receiver position, are Debo and Ayuk that much better than Terry and Jahan and Curtis Samuel? obviously they're better at tight end. But, are they good enough to overcome 4 or 5 terrible throws a game? I don't think that team is much more successful than the Commanders are with him as a quarterback, because he will also win you a couple of games that you shouldn't win. Unfortunately, that's just how he works, right? Yeah. He's got that magic to him that he's gonna pull it off. So I think that, it's just law of averages. I think it's just going to average itself out, and he'll be like right around a 500 quarterback no matter where he goes, if he's pressing a starting duty for long term. Now, if you put him on the 49ers for like 4 games, you're probably 3-1, 4-0, because that defense is good enough to keep you in all those games, and he's good enough to, the cracks don't start showing with Heineke, for a few weeks. So I think he's definitely good enough to get you through that. But I think if you put him on any team in the NFL long term, you're not going to have much better. I think, all things go perfectly, you probably win 10 games with him in a 17-game season.
Brian, what Eric is essentially saying is that Brock Purdy is better than Taylor Heinicke. Do you agree with that notion?
Yeah.
No. I think Heineke would probably do about the same or a little bit better, to be honest with you, because to me it's more so the offensive coordinator understanding what Heineke is like. I think I just said this is I know Heineke has a weak arm. I know he makes some bad decisions. So if Heineke throws the ball 40 times, is that Heineke's fault or is that mine for calling 40 pass plays? It's the offensive coordinator. It's the play calling. It's how you craft the game plan. What are they doing with Brock Purdy? They're moving him around in the pocket, right? They're rolling him out. Did we ever see that with Heineke? Once, twice, that's it. In that Giants game, we call 5 wide receivers on the goal line, and we don't block Kayvon Thibodeau, and he gets a free shot at Heineke there in the end zone of that game, or down the goal line, wherever it was. On there. I mean, these are things that, Heineke can't overcome those. And, I think Kyle Shanahan could have absolutely done. I saw Kyle Shanahan win games with Nick Mullins, a very Brock Purdy-like type player in 2020, another low-round draft pick. I think he was 6th round as well. And he gets production from these guys. And I think Heineke, who's in some of these games, he's had to do it himself in terms of just taking chances and throwing it down to Terry and getting, some of these are probably luck, but he's able to do that. He provides that type of spark. So I think he could have easily won 1 or 2 more. I'm not saying he's winning 14 games. I'm not crazy or anything like that. But could he? Absolutely. I think he's slightly better, but we're not talking about like he's a Pro Bowler in comparison to Brock Purdy. I think probably 2 games is 2 games better. I think is reasonable.
I think Kyle Shanahan would hate Taylor Heinicke personally, because Brock Purdy is not a gunslinger. Brock Purdy is a surgeon, I guess is the way to put it. Like, he's going to throw the ball to the right. He's going to throw the ball to the right. He's going to make the right read, and the coaches will make that easy. Heineke, in my opinion, if you put him in Kyle Shanahan's offense, would not make the right read. He would make the F it Debo down there somewhere play. Like, he's going to make a couple of those throws a game, and you're not going to coach that out of him no matter what you're calling. And I agree with you to a point. Like, I think that Shanahan or a better offensive coordinator would do more to protect Heineke, but Heineke is still going to Heineke, and he's going to make some just mind-numbingly bad throws throughout the game, and he's going to get away with some of them, and he's not going to get away with other ones. So I think it would just average out. But I think it would take he's a good fit in a certain type of offense, but I don't think Shanahan's scheme is a good fit for him, because Shanahan is he's very big on the making the correct throw in the correct situation, and I don't think that's Heineke's. Heineke's definitely a freelancer, and I don't think that that's something that would fit that scheme very well.
Shanahan has had some guys he doesn't like. Who would he like? Who would he like the most? RG3, Johnny Manziel, or Taylor Heinicke?
He would not. Yeah, I mean, Heineke is cut from the cloth that Manziel is cut from.
Yeah,
he's a little more disciplined than Manziel was, and he's a little more aware of his limitations than Manziel was. But in RG3, he loved RG3 when RG3 did what he told him, but when he started telling him what plays he wasn't going to run, then that became a problem. So allegedly,
honestly, I think Purdy, from what we've seen of Purdy, you never know about Purdy and his development. They're pretty similar quarterbacks to me. I think, in terms of talent level, I do agree that Purdy's a better decision maker seemingly, and is more willing to take the throw that is there. Most of the time when you're watching Purdy make throws, the receiver is really open. At least
Yeah,
from what I've
that's
seen.
exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's making that play. You've seen Taylor have receivers wide open and then throw it 6 yards over their head to a defensive back. We talked about in the podcast of the season. That interception comes over the middle where he's got that guy sitting down and he just sails that ball. But yeah, I think ultimately if he's in that 49ers offense, I think there's a net negative of maybe 2 games worse than what Purdy would do. I don't know what Purdy extrapolates to over an entire season. One fundamental difference, though, is that Purdy's still in that honeymoon period where that tape is not out there yet. Let's see what happens next year when Purdy comes back, named the starter. Teams are able to understand what he does and try to take away his limitations, or try to enhance his limitations to their benefit. We'll see, but nonetheless, I like what Taylor did. You guys know I'm not a huge backup quarterback type of rah-rah person. I don't just believe in that in the NFL. I like the story. I thought it was exciting, but and I wish him absolute best. We'll talk about where we think he ends up in a minute. But Brian, real quick before we move on, Bailey Zappi, is it Zap or Zappy? I think it's Zappy, right?
I think they say Zappy. I just say Zap, but yeah, I think it's Zappy.
If you put Zappy, Purdy, and Heineke in a room and you can only come out with one, who you picking out of that room?
Oh, I'm going Zap.
I figured you did it.
Zap's the out of those 3, Zap's the best, and his Zap is in Shanahan's system. I mean, it's a runaway. It's a runaway.
Okay, I knew you'd say that, so I should throw you a bone. All right. So then we had Sam Howell, and we've talked about Sam Howell recently. Really, the big news with Howell is that he's sort of the starter going into the offseason program, and they will then evaluate from there. Howell had the one start, and there's no way you can explain to me why Howell didn't start earlier when Wentz got hurt, but we can talk about that in another podcast. But Howell had the single start. He was 11 of 19. You know the stats, a couple 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns. I think from what I saw, and I watched a little bit of the game back again, and I think you saw a lot of safe throws for Howell, but that's a good thing, right? In some ways. The thing I didn't see, and I think this is Scott Turner, and he's no longer here, is not a lot of different types of throws. There were a lot of the same throw made available for Howell, the slants, and I think there was the he threw a great deep ball or a couple of great deep balls in the game, and that's what I think gets fans really excited. The underneath stuff, you got to see it over an extended period of time, right? And to see if that's going to be effective, he's going to make the right reads based on different defensive coverages. But the deep balls and the deep ball placements, I think, really got people very excited about Howell, and for good reason. We've not had a consistent deep ball thrower in this offense, or really in DC since
Mark Rippon.
RG3 was a great deep ball thrower. I'll give it to RG3. But and Kirk had his moments when it was a really safe deep ball throw. That's when he would do it. But I think what we said all along with Howell it seemed like that was the case when he played, right? He's sort of like Heineke mixed with Wentz, right? You get a little bit of that gunslinger mentality, but he's a little bit more responsible with the football, I think. And then you saw with Heineke at times, he's from a mobile perspective, I thought he was a better runner than I think we've seen from Heineke at any point in the Heineke tenure here.
Heineke's a scrambler. That's the difference. Heineke scrambles, Howell runs.
Exactly. And for everybody watching, you're going to say, what about the Tampa game? No, I know. Trust me. I think that Howell's built for it more than Heineke is too, to continue to run. Now, that's one of the things that the coaching staff sort of cut the legs out from Heineke by telling him not to run and stay in the pocket. You remember that controversy from 2021, right? But and I thought that for the most part, he operated what he was asked to do well. We said this previously, he wasn't asked to do a lot. And I think that's really annoying about what Scott Turner didn't do in that game, was give him more opportunities to really flex his skill set so you can get a better assessment. But coming out of that game, if you're a supporter of Howell, I completely understand why you are excited about what you saw. but I think you have to see more. You have to see more of what that is, and that opportunity to see that is going to be this offseason program, right? If he does, in fact, go into the offseason program as QB1 into OTAs, then you get to see first team reps full on, and then you have to go through and let's assume that he starts next year as a quarterback. You got to go through that same now there's film on you cycle that all second year quarterbacks have to go through. So it's really hard to create a sound assessment off of the one game because there's so many variables that just aren't filled in yet. But I think you saw there is a toolkit there that coaches may or may not want to continue to try to mold. It seems like they do want to mold it at this point, but you saw that there's tools. And I think out of that last game of the season, with the coordinator on his way out, that's all you could ask for at this point. Like if this was a long-term offensive coordinator situation, I'd be like, you needed to do so much more, and I'd be really upset right now. But for a guy that's not going to be here, you're not running that offense. Well, until Ken Zampese gets hired, right? Then I think you can live with what you got out of that game in terms of just your evaluation at that point.
I think some of the game plan that you mentioned there from Scott Turner in that last game, I think he probably knew the writing was on the wall for him. So I don't think he wanted to put out a game plan that would make him look bad necessarily either. He probably was like, hey, I want a safe game plan. This is the last tape I'm the offensive coordinator for. Because I'm sure it wasn't a surprise when that Monday came and he got let go. So I think he was trying to kind of make himself look good with a conservative game plan, make sure he didn't give away the game somehow by his play calling too.
One thing I liked about so I looked at Sam. I rewatched that game a couple times, and the interception looked awful in real time. It looked like a terrible. But looking back at it, watching that play, that's the right throw to or the right read. It was exactly who he should have thrown to. It was a bad throw, that's in my opinion a positive sign. He just made the wrong throw. He tried to drill it in there instead of trying to lay it up over the top. Because if he throws it at the pylon, it's a good chance that's a touchdown. But he tried to gun it. So I don't hate I was really like that was an awful throw, but rewatching it, it was the right read. It was the right guy to throw to. It just was the wrong throw to make. So that's the kind of stuff that you can only get through experience, honestly. So I didn't hate that. And making safe throws for a rookie quarterback in his first start, I have no problem with that either. He completed the safe throws, so that's really what matters. And he did throw two really, really good deep balls. One was caught, one wasn't. But it was a very catchable deep ball that Jahan didn't come up with. Would have been a tough catch, but I mean, we've seen Jahan make that type of catch before. So I look forward to seeing more of Howell. He's my QB1 because he's the only QB on the team.
Yeah, and I think it'll be important in the process because look, he's got to earn it as much as I may like him, other fans may like him. Look, the possibility is real. He is not good at all. And if he's not good, we need to know so we can get him off the team and find somebody else who can do the job. And I think one of the biggest things that we'll see is, right, you mentioned the offseason program. Hey, does he come in ready to prepare? Because if we hear, hey, in OTAs, Sam doesn't seem to know the plays or he's not sure, right? That's going to be your first warning sign right there. Okay, he wasn't doing the work. He wasn't putting in the work. This may not work out. And then the next thing that, we should be on the lookout for is, hey, he's going to have to earn it, right? He's going to have to beat somebody out. Is it going to be a Derek Carr? Probably not. It's probably going to be a Jacoby Brissett type of guy that he's going to battle with. And if he can put down a Jacoby Brissett who started a lot of games, who's been in a lot of offenses, Jacoby Brissett is a really smart guy. He's picked up many offenses very quickly. Indianapolis, Patriots, Browns, like a lot of different offenses that are complex and very tough to follow along with quickly. So if he can do that, in training camp, that'll be some good measuring sticks to see, hey, he's progressing in the right way. And then, as you said, Ellie, like, hey, all right, now start playing some of these games and let some of these opponents get tape on you from there. But we will have some warning signs or some tests coming up here shortly where we'll see if he's on the right track.
Yeah, and I think I don't have a lot of concern about him being able to pick up an offense. That's just not been in his sort of history about an issue with him. I think it's, can he play within it? Whatever the offense is, can he play within it, right? Especially starts to build confidence in the NFL. Oh, I can make this throw. I can do this. I can do that. That'll be interesting to see. And then, of course, they put the edict out there that they want to run the football, right? 2-1, and
Such
is
a
that
lie.
type of game plan supportive of what Sam Howell is, right? Sam Howell is a go-getter, at least in college, right? With the football. He has, he lost the weapons at North Carolina, blah, blah, blah. So they ran the ball more, he ran more, etc. But Brian, I hear your point about, the coordinator, and Eric, your point about a safe game plan. I just really want you to stress test guys, especially when you're going into critical offseason decisions. Stress test them, see how they handle it, come out. Now you know more about it. The
other thing on the stress test is we got to take into account how awful Dallas was in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know how much you can stress test against a team that doesn't even look like they want to be there. Like, they were so listless that entire game. I have no idea what was going on there, but there's only so much stress you can put under when the other team isn't trying very hard.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That is absolutely fair. All right, so we've given you the 3 quarterbacks that were on the roster this year. What I want to go through now is Eric,
Jake Fromm left.
Say what?
No Jake Fromm discussion.
No, we're not.
Oh wait, hold on. I got a good trivia question for you guys. What round was Jake Fromm drafted in?
Wasn't he undrafted?
No,
I don't even know.
Yeah, he was a 6th-round draft pick.
The Bills, right?
Close, 5th, and it was to the Colts, I believe.
Yeah, it was something like that.
I don't know anything.
Where guys are going to end up next year? Brian, who's our starter next year, week 1? In your guess?
It's Sam Howell. I believe they bring in like I said, a Jacoby Brissett, maybe an Andy Dalton or a Marcus Mariota, somebody of that type of background who is a starter, who has been a starter, but who's also been a backup. And if they lose the job, then they'll be okay being the backup. I think Howell beats him out for good or for bad, and he's the starter. Because I really don't think that we're going to be able to get anybody else kind of at another level, right? There's no there's no Derek Carr that I believe is coming here. There's no Tom Brady that's coming here. So I think it's going to be that type of level of player, and I think Howell beats that person out.
Okay. Eric, do you agree? Howell QB1 week 1?
We'll see. A lot of it has to do with who they bring in as an offensive coordinator, because that offensive coordinator is going to try to get their guy. And they may not. Like, if Pat Shurmur's there, do they make a run at actually a guy I think Shurmur would bring in would be Jeff Driscoll. And in that case, obviously Howell would make a big push for the starting job. But Driscoll is just a guy who Shurmur has coached before, and he's going to be available. And Drew Lock is another one they may make a push for. Drew Lock technically had his best year under Shurmur, but his best year wasn't that great, and we'll see, what happens with him. And if it's Studesville from Miami, maybe they make a push to try to get Teddy Bridgewater to not retire and make a move up here. So it's a lot of it depends on that. I can see somebody like Sam Darnold getting signed to a 1-year prove-it deal, which would be a disaster. If he saw the field, I think Sam Howell honestly might be able to beat him out.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's damaged goods at this point.
TJ Walker,
even though they're kind of similar. I think Darnold is a little bigger, but they place it. They're very quick to run, both of them. They both kind of drill the ball. Obviously, I think Darnold's got better tools, but he's also much more like damaged goods at the NFL level. But those are the kind of guys I see coming in. And the offensive coordinator they hire, Kenny Zampese's here. I think Andy Dalton is a really good candidate to come in. If Zampese was the OC in Cincinnati a few years ago when Dalton was there, he at least would be able to guide Howell through the offense. I just think that they are going to try to make a big splash. I just don't think it's going to work. So I don't think they're going to get anybody that has a choice. And I've said this many times, and I'll say it many more times throughout the offseason until all this settles. There's just anybody that's got other options probably isn't going to come to this situation as a quarterback. I think a 1-year deal for somebody who's trying to show that they can still play is the best we're going to be able to do this year. So Tannehill's, Carr's, obviously Rodgers, Brady, those guys aren't coming here at all. So we'll see what happens, but I just don't see any top tier talent. So all that to say this, my week 1 starter is Sam Howell.
Okay.
Just as a result of circumstance.
Yeah, I got you. Players that are quarterbacks are unreactive free agents. Gardner Minshew, I think he's a possibility as a quarterback for them to bring in and compete. Cooper Rush, potential option to come in and compete. I don't know if I see that though. Jeff Driscoll, you had mentioned. Drew Lock, I think, is also a possibility for them to bring in and compete and see if you can get something out of him. And if not, he's a backup. He sort of knows that already. I don't think Lamar Jackson at this point is realistic. Mike White from the Jets is another unrestricted free agent. You could potentially see that, though I think he probably wants different type of opportunities. I would love Geno Smith here in an offense that suits Geno Smith. However, I think Geno Smith played himself into a pretty big contract.
Yeah.
And he would be a fool to leave Seattle.
Yeah,
he would be a fool to leave there.
Did you guys look
at more than a 1-year deal? He signed like 3 one-year deals with Seattle in a row. I think he'll get like a 3-year deal now.
Yep.
Did you guys see Geno Smith's the stat line for the season? I finally saw it, and it's unbelievable. It's like 4,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, 11 errors. I mean, it was an impressive year. Like he's
top 6 quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah, he was excellent. He's getting a deal. They're giving him a deal, however long it may be, but he's getting one from us.
Yep.
Yeah. It was good year.
Jacoby Brissett, we talked about, realistic option. Daniel Jones, I think New York has already said that they want to retain him. And of course, Sam Darnold, blah, blah, blah. Here's who
Baker
I think
Mayfield too, right?
Baker Mayfield. I skipped him on purpose.
Yeah, I think he'll play himself into I think he'll get somewhere. He'll go somewhere else. But
yeah. Who I think they'll bring in to compete. All right, this is going to shock you. So if you're listening on the radio, pull over, drive safe, right? Davis Mills from the Houston Texans.
Ooh.
I think that is a very realistic possibility to come in and compete with Sam Howell. Davis Mills has flashed some serious ability, but has also flashed some, it's not always been great. But Houston's moving on, right? They're in a position to get the quarterback that they want, not as highly as they wanted, thanks to Lovie Smith. Little move there at the end of the season.
Good for Lovie.
They had a position to get CJ Stroud or Will Levis or Bryce Young. One of those guys they're coming away with. So that's going to make Davis Mills expendable. And I think that, let's assume Zampese gets the offensive coordinator job. I think that's a good quarterback for what they're trying to do offensively. And I think you talked about, Brian, the quality that you mentioned, like he has to be okay being a backup if that's the case. Why would he not be? Because that's what he's been since he came in the league for the most part, right? So I think that's a good possibility. And then I think you have to see who would win the job between those two. And I don't think that's a given one way or the other. Like I think Davis Mills could really showcase himself relatively well. Would it be a top-tier starter? No, but it would be a good competition. And then you just let the best person win.
Davis Mills, last year was his rookie year, so he's still under contract. So we'd have to trade for him, right?
No. I think the Texans are going to cut him.
Oh,
I saw some reports that they are saying that the Davis Mills era is over in Texas.
Doesn't make sense to cut him.
Yeah, just keep him.
I mean, he's a low-round pick on a rookie deal. At least he's a body. Yeah. I can't imagine cutting him in the offseason, at least. Maybe if he doesn't make it out of camp, or if they can – I would think they would at least try to trade him based on what he did last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I would do, but I'm not the Texans, and they're not known for their decision-making. So, we'll see.
They may be moving on.
One guy I really don't want to see here, honestly, you brought him up, is Gardner Minshew. First of all, I don't think he'd win the job because all he's done is lose starting quarterback competitions his whole career. And two, he would give us the Heineke problem all over again. And even to an extent, Mike White would do the same thing. They're just the fan there. He's going to have a contingent of fans that's just going to want to see him no matter what. And if you have a young starter, it's just not a good situation, in my opinion. Nothing against Gardner Minshew. I think he's a fine quarterback. I think he's another Ryan Fitzpatrick type who's just going to give you moments of brilliance and moments of just awfulness. I think he's got a solid role as a backup. It's such a with the cult like following backup quarterbacks get, especially in DC. I think Gardner Minshew's a bad fit, and even Mike White, because I don't think Mike White is all that either, and we kind of saw that this year. People love him a lot. His play doesn't back up his swagger, I guess, always. But I mean, the team did play well with him at quarterback. They obviously played better than they did with Zach Wilson. But I just don't. He's another kind of maybe Heineke type. It's just he's not going to last as a long-term starter, in my opinion. And he's going to have fans that just want to see him no matter what. So those are guys I'd rather not see.
Yeah, on the Davis Mills thing, if Ron trades like a 5th or a 6th round pick for him, I wouldn't be too upset. I think some of the quarterbacks after the top guys in this draft, I think Mills would be a better option than any of those guys. But just think about like all the guys at LE that you named, Eric, you named, that I named. They're all in that same range, right? They're backups, they're spot starters, they're low end starters, high end backups. Like we're talking about essentially the same guy. He may look a little different from each one, but it's the same guy that we're talking about here. So we really don't have a lot of options when it comes to free agent quarterback. Davis Mills to Gardner Minshew. I mean, they're all the same dude, unfortunately.
Yeah, and dude, Gardner Minshew with his mustache and little
swagger,
bandana he wears.
Yeah.
Howell would never stand a chance with this fan base. The guy dresses like Maverick from Top Gun. Like it would just the fans would go nuts for Gardner Minshew. And I actually happen to like Gardner Minshew as a quarterback. He's not amazing, but I think he has acquitted himself relatively well in the NFL. I think he deserves a chance. But not if you're a Howell supporter. It would not go well. And people like Howell, but they would love Gardner Minshew as the backup. And I just, man, that would get ugly quick. More so than Heineke, I think, over time, especially if he got in and he was slinging it around a little bit, it would just be so brutal. Mike White, I think, he's had some moments in games for the Jets, but I think he's proven over time there's diminishing returns the more he plays, right? So same situation we just had. So, all right. So there it is.
I got one for you guys. Because I had read Mitch Trubisky, right? He had signed a 2-year deal with the Steelers. He thought he was going to be the starter, which I don't know why he thought that. You knew the Steelers were going to draft a quarterback because that's what they do to build around. Do you think I got to imagine he's probably like, can you get me out of my contract this last year so I can go see if I can find a place to start? If he comes available, right? If they cut him and they release him, would you guys want him to come in and then compete for with Howell or whoever?
I mean, fine. He's just another one of the same class of quarterbacks that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I don't see. He's kind of like in that Mariota range, class of quarterback, where he's just going to be meh. I'd just rather not. But I'm pretty much going to hate any quarterback they bring in this offseason. Let's just put it that way, unless they bring back Randall Cunningham. I just don't. I don't know. I don't want. Like I said, I've made it clear to you guys. Maybe we should. I don't know if this is the podcast to do it on, but my feelings. I'm so out on the 2023 season already. Like I'm so media. I don't care. We know what's going to happen. It's going to be a transition. It's going to be a 7-10 season because they're all 7-10 seasons with this regime. And I just want to get it over with. And personally, I just rather do that with a quarterback who we haven't seen play and who's young and cheap and we don't have to give up resources for. So I would rather see Sam Hill start or Howell start just for that reason. Just because I don't want to sit through another season of a mediocre backup quarterback or some guy trying to recapture his career. Just not interested. We've seen that the past couple of years. Just give me something young and fresh. Let me get through this season and let's move on to 2024. Horrible attitude. It's going to make for a terrible off season and a long season next year, but that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, so the Trubisky question, no, I'm all the way out on Trubisky. There's a famous line by Joe Budden: when somebody shows you who they are, you should believe them. I don't know if he originated that quote. Mitchell Trubisky has shown you what he is in this league. He will have some moments where he's effective throwing the football, and then he will refuse to throw the football down the field or into tight windows. And it's going to frustrate you to all get out because he has the potential and he has the talent. He does not have the mentality to open it up and play quarterback as a QB1 in this league. I don't want any of that. I don't want any more of the what if quarterbacks. He's the most what if quarterback I think I could see. If we had Daboll and we were the New York Giants, maybe, because Daboll unlocked Daniel Jones to some degree, right? But not us. No way. Pass. All right. That is the Quarterback Room 2023 Declassified episode. Hopefully you have already subscribed, but if not, take a moment to do so.
Wait, before we do this, we have not yet paid our bills.
Dang,
So we usually do it right away, but I love, how much I love reading paragraphs of state abbreviations, so we can't leave that out, right? Shall I begin?
Wait,
there's the music. There's the music. All right. 4 NFL teams, 2 conference championship games, and only a few more shots to win big on the playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Not a new customer? They got you covered too. You can field conference championship thrills with stepped-up same-game parlays. Take your shot at an even bigger NFL payout and boost your winnings. With each leg, you add up 100%. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code CDP11. New customers can bet $5 on the conference championships. Get $200 in free bets instantly only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code CDP11. Gambling problem? Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be accessed by calling 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-426-2537 in Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Wyoming. 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-522-4700 in Kansas and New Hampshire. 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Visit opgr.org in Oregon. Or 1-888-532-3500 in Virginia. 21 plus 18 in New Hampshire and Wyoming. Physically present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, select parishes, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming only. Void in Ohio and Ontario. Eligibility restrictions apply. $200 in free bets valid, 1 per new customer. Minimum $5 deposit, minimum bet, or $5 minimum bet rather. Promo code required, CDP11. $200 issued as free bets that expire 7 days after being awarded. That's 168 hours if you're that kind of person. Free bets must be wagered 1x and stake is not included in any returns or winnings. Stepped up same game parlay. 1 stepped up same game parlay token issued per eligible NFL game after opt-in. Minimum $1 bet. Max bet limits apply. Minimum 3 leg. Each leg minimum minus 300 odds. Total bet plus 100 odds or longer. Profit boosted up to 100%. 10 plus legs for 100% boost. Promotional offer period ends 2/12/23 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. See terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/football-terms.
Woo!
There it is.
There it is.
We're going to ride out with the music. Subscribe, y'all. Tell a friend to tell a friend. You know? Make it happen. Spread the word.
Keep that music going. Get us through there. Commanders Declassified is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. I just read it. I hope you were here. I don't know. Did you already do the like and subscribe thing? We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Let's get us there. Let's get us there this week.
The voice to man guy, deep voice. Baby. I'll do about it.
Oh, man.
Subscribe.
I just didn't care. You just don't understand how much I want you to subscribe, do you? We're here for you.
We just lost 12 subscribers after that.
Oh, yeah. Just after my voice to man, deep voice guy. You need to bring him back. You need to bring him back in the band.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Commanders Declassified. We are out of here.